Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina at CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this elegant snaky wirework bracelet. Now if you like them, I do have them available for sale in my shop along with other jewelry kits and tutorials. You'll be able to find the link for it in the description box down below, and while you're there you can also sign up to my newsletter to make sure you don't miss out on any future updates. Otherwise, if you want to learn how you can make your own, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. Now the wire that I'm using is a regular round silver coated copper wire, and it's a 0.8mm. Then we need a leather cord, so you can use either a 1mm or a 1.5mm, that's up to you. And I'm just using the purple one. You could also replace this with twisted wire. Then for the beads I'm using 3mm rounds, and the specific ones that I've got are faceted purple coated hematite gemstone rounds. But of course you can use whatever you want to, just make sure the holes in your beads are large enough to fit the wire through. And then of course we need our findings to finish off our bracelet, so I'm using these ribbon ends to finish off the ends of the braid. And they have these loops, and then we can then attach our clasp, so I'm using a lobster claw clasp and extender chain, and of course putting it together with jump rings. As for the tools, first of all we need our fuss cutter so we can cut our wire, chain nose pliers to help fasten the ribbon ends, tweezer nose pliers to manipulate the wire, and then I'm using the spring clamp to help hold the wire and leather in place while we're braiding. So the material list will be in the description box down below along with useful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Then we need to cut some lengths of our wire, and what I have first of all is 5 lengths of my 0.8mm of about 30 centimeters each, and the leather cord we just want to cut the same length as the wires. Then I bring all my wires and leather together, so I make sure to also place it in the order that I want and they're laying flat next to each other. So I have one length of wire and then the leather and then the remaining lengths of wire. So that's 4 on the other side there. And I'm just going to make sure they stay like that, and also the ends are even. Then I'm going to put them into my spring clamp. Just hold on to them, clamp down, and then they're sitting there nicely. So we're now in a position where we can start braiding. So I'm just going to separate out my wires a little bit here. So the 2 wires and the leather in the middle there, in between them, I'm going to separate out to the side where they're coming from, and the other 3 a bit to the other side. So I'm just kind of separating down the middle there, and these 2 wires with the leather in the middle, they're gonna all work as one. So this is one length or one strand in the braid, you could say, and the other wires are separate strands. So we then need to start the braid, and I'm just going to make a few movements before we start adding beads in. So this length with the leather in, I'm just going to bring towards the opposite side, but then making sure there's a curve in place. So the beginning here can be a little bit messy before we get started properly in the braid, but that's why I'm starting without beads. So what I'm going to do is these 3 lengths of wire, I'm just going to separate them a little bit, and the furthest outer one I'm going to bring under the next one and over the third one, and then we need to bring it underneath the 2 lengths of wire with the leather in the middle, and then basically over to the opposite side. Then we take the next outer one from this side here, then the next one in, I'm just going to push up a little bit. I'm going to then bring the outer one underneath that, and then over the top of the length with leather, and then out to the same side as the other one we just brought over. And then the final one, just flatten everything out nicely, is going to go underneath the length with leather. So they're always going to be going opposite each other, which is what creates the braid. And this is just kind of our starting point. And then we're going to start getting into the proper braid. So I'm going to start on the side with just the wires, and then I just want to prepare my wires here. So the middle one I'm going to push down because that's the one that came over, and the inner one I'm going to push up a little bit, so they're kind of coming away from each other. But the outer one I want to add my first bead to. So just grab your bead, add it to the end, and let it drop all the way down so it sits up against the length with the leather. I like to just put my finger on everything where I'm creating the braid, then bring the wire in between the other 2 that we pushed up and down, and then over to the opposite side and join in with the one with leather, and then flatten these back out. And also when I'm working with wire in braids, I like to smooth the wire out as I go because it's going to kind of get misshaped a bit by the warmth of your hands and fingers. Then I'm going to take the inner one of the 2 on this side, push that down because that came over last, and then the very outer one I want to add my next bead, let it drop all the way down, and then bring that wire with the bead, making sure the bead stays in that outer corner, over to the opposite side and join in with the others, and then flatten this back out. So we're starting to create the beads here on the outer edge, in this case on the right side. It doesn't matter what side you start on, we're going to keep swapping from side to side. Then before I bring this last one over, I'm going to bring the length with the leather. So before I do that, I just want to place my wires. So the middle one of these 3 lengths here on the left side, I'm pushing up because it came underneath last, and the one we just brought over I'm pushing down a bit. And the reason that I do that is just to make more space for the wires because it works quite differently than if you're using cord or another fiber. Then bring the length with the leather in between them over towards the opposite side, and then making sure we have a curve in it there. Flatten these back out, and then we just need to bring the last one over here to join up with the other 2 lengths of wire. But before we do, add a bead, let it drop all the way down, and then just make sure we go over or under in the right direction. So I can see the previous one went under, that means this one needs to go over. So bring it over the length with the leather to join up with the other ones. And just keep smoothing out your wire as you go. And there you can see we've done our first little section with the beads. And that is basically what there is to it. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be on the opposite side. So to get started, I'm going to push the middle one up because it comes underneath previously. And the inner one here, I'm going to push down. So again, they're kind of coming out separate from each other. And before I move the outer one, I'm just going to add a bead onto it, let it drop down, keep hold of everything there, make sure the bead stays on that outer corner, while you then bring this wire in between them and join up on the other side, and then flatten these wires back out. And next, the inner one of the two we have left, push that up in this case because it came underneath previously. Grab another bead, add it to the outer wire, and then bring that over to the opposite side, coming underneath the one that we pushed up, joining up with the other ones, flatten this back down. And then before we bring the last one, same as before, I'm just going to bring the one with the leather to the opposite side. So before we do that, just push down the middle one and push up the inner one so we can bring the length with the leather in between them and get a little bit of a tighter braid. Flatten them back out, which will then also help keep the leather in place. And then to finish off that side, don't forget to add the last bead out of the three like that. And then just make sure you check the last wire that is going over or under the leather length here is over the top of it. So this one needs to go under, and then make sure that that bead stays in that corner while you bring it under and over to the other side. So we end up with 3 on this side again. And that is now the next little section with the 3 beads on the outer edge. So as you can see, they're going to keep swapping. We have 3 first, then we have 3 on the opposite side. It's going to go back to having 3 there and go like that until you have the length that you need. Now I made it to the other end here. Then we just want to straighten out our wires. So the length with the leather in, I'm just going to put my fingers on where the final braid is, straighten it out so it's coming just more straight down. And then the other lengths here, I just want to kind of continue the braid a little bit, just without beads now. So just kind of push the wires into place and just bring the outer one down, and then also more straight down like this, and then literally just bring the other ones down and join up, because we want to make the ends ready to be able to put on our ribbon ends. So it looks a little something like that. Then to finish off the end, I'm going to just grab my flush cutters here, and we want to cut across. Now obviously one of these lengths is leather, so it's going to kind of want to move where it wants to go as opposed to the wires, but it's somewhat held in place by the wires that are crossing over and under. Now I just like to take my ribbon end and kind of place it next to the end to know where I need to cut. So kind of lay it across, put your pliers where we need to cut, and you can just cut across the wires and the leather. Just go all the way over to the other side, and then you just want to make sure that none of the ends of the wire are kind of sticking out towards the sides, because we're then going to put this on and we don't want the ends of the wire to be sticking out the sides of the ribbon end. But before I add it, I want to add some glue as well, because that'll make it much more durable. So I've got my E6000, and then I'm just going to apply that with a toothpick. So get a little bit on there, and then put it inside of the ribbon end. Just make sure to coat the inside walls. We don't need to fill it up completely because it's going to get pushed down over the wires and it's just going to come spilling out the glue if there's too much or something like that. And then what I also like to do is add some glue right on the end here. Make sure I get it in between the wire, so really into the nooks and crannies, because then when we put the 2 pieces together, it's going to adhere much better. So something like that, and then place the ribbon end onto it. And then I like to hold it in my hand and put a finger on either side, and then I take my chain nose and start pushing it flat down over the wires. Now I like to do it gradually so that when I'm almost all the way tight, just double check, make sure it's still in the middle, and then go in and put a final squeeze in there, make it nice and tight. And I also like to go in from the sides and just squeeze them flat as well. And there we go. Then we obviously just need to leave this to dry, and you can then go to the other end, do the same thing, and then we have our loops there where we can attach our findings. Then once you've finished off the ends, it's time to shape it so we can wear it. So you can either shape it around something like a bracelet mandrel or anything you have handy, but you can also use your hands and fingers, go in and start putting a curve into it. So just gently go from side to side, adding more and more of a curve with the aim of bringing the 2 ends closer together so we can obviously use the clasp. So your bracelet is now finished and ready to wear. Now I have loads more braided wirework tutorials on my channel, so you can always check them out. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.